Alright you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with this deck profile on Jewel Knight Ashlei. The first 4 copies for my grade 3s is of course 4 copies of Pure Heart Jewel Knight Ashlei. Pure Heart Jewel Knight Ashlei is one of the newest Royal Paladin grade 3s to come back from the past. She introduces multiple attacking. She's your main grade 3 that you want to ride. Her ability to give additional critical to any of units that are placed above her means that she's one of the most reliable rear guards that we have to generate the additional critical effects for our attacking units. Now, one of the specialties of the Jewel Knights that I even stated before in my Soul Saber Dragon video was that they give effects to units that are called over them, meaning that you can have them in the previous battle and then recycle them into the deck and then have them called over when you combine them with Ashlei's ability. Now, having multiple copies of Ashlei is really powerful for the deck, but because it does require a lot of soul, we need to play multiple cards in the deck that generate us extra soul, meaning that we don't just have to rely on the multiple attacks given us to our Vanguard Ashlei, but we're going to have multiple attacks given us to our Rearguard Ashlei. At least one more from the 2 effects that we have just from her. But I'm going to go ahead and show the supporting units that make this strategy possible. The next grade 3 I play in the deck is 4 copies of Swordsman of the Explosive Flames Palamedes. Palamedes is just, at this point, my favorite friend for Royal Paladin. Whenever I play him in Soul Saber, he's amazing, and in this deck, he lives up to his reputation. Now, Palamedes in this deck is not as powerful as it is in Soul Saber Dragon, but because our deck does require us to have multiple Soul Blast, so we can activate the ability of our Pure Heart Jewel Knight Ashlei, we're going to need him to give us the extra soul charge, as well as his benefits from the additional soul blasting that we do for the deck. Now, on average, Palamedes will be a 23k beat stick as you just combine him with Ashlei to get the additional 10,000 power, since she's going to be doing a soul blast of 2, meaning that if he's in play, he'll be 23k on your left. But the best part about this card is that if you had an Ashlei on the prior turn, he becomes a 23k with a critical already. And that's already a magic number, as against Excel decks that requires 15, against other Force decks that requires 10 before it triggers. But any effects applied to that help us with our multiple attack strategy, as even if we need to call over Palamedes, at least he was a big beat stick and good supporting unit before our previous Ashlei turn. Moving on to my grade 2s, I play 2 copies of Blaster Blade. I'm only playing 2 copies of Blaster Blade simply because he's for specific board removal of pieces. In certain decks that you are going to play against, there are certain units that you do not want to have them keep on the field, and that's mainly his purpose of the deck. The additional critical that he gets on the Vanguard Circle is very easy to achieve for this deck, as our deck is more focused on offensive capabilities than we are about anything else. But I'm just playing Blaster Blade to get rid of those annoying units my opponent might have against me. My next grade 2 and a personal tech of mine is 2 copies of Great Sage Barron. Now, from my playtesting with Jewel Knights, something that I've been noticing a lot is that the Jewel Knights unfortunately don't acquire a lot of power even for a Force deck. The average amount of numbers that they make is usually about 23 with just battle effects, and then if you combine them with the right units, they can obviously become a lot stronger. Having Barron in the back row or having Barron up front with you whenever you're ready to attack is extremely helpful, as the additional 5k helps make the numbers you need to get past your opponent. And if you combine this card with an Ashlei on the Vanguard Circle, or you combine this card with a Palamedes, and you've already given the Ashlei effect, that means that you potentially have a 3 to 4 critical unit coming at your opponent that they cannot stop. This is just how you win your games early, but I'm playing Barron right now as a tech choice, meaning you can play anything else. But this is just if I really see the opportunity to go for that kill turn, and I can just use Barron's Counterblast along with Ashlei's multiple attacks to create a very deadly alliance. For my next grade 2 and the most important grade 2 of the deck, I play 4 copies of Explode Jewel Knight Laille. Now, I've talked about this card before in my Soul Saber Dragon deck profile regarding her effects, but a quick little rundown of this card is the fact that she's one of the main units you're going to use for your soul charging and resources management. She also is one of the supporting grade 2s in the deck that are Jewel Knight, meaning that you have to play 4 copies of this card in order to maximize the number of Jewel Knights you have in your deck, in case you're just simply unlucky. And she has 10,000 power to that's called over her. This helps make the big numbers that I was talking about the deck does have trouble making, as anything called over her will just get plus 10k, whatever power bonus it might get later. And if you call another Laille over a Laille, that simply means that combined with your supporting grade 1 Morvidius, your attacks are already going to be hitting in the magical number range, as she's going to be swinging 28k against your opponent. Her ability to get the soul charge and the resource bonus as well, that gives an additional 5,000 power, only enforces the additional power that we can get with our units. And that is what makes Laille so strong. I play 4 copies of Absolute Blade Knight's Livarot. Livarot is just the best grade 2 Royal Paladin unit, hands down. I've talked about this card so many times before, but his ability to get you a grade 2 in any situation is what makes him so extremely helpful. So if we are having a bad day against our opponent, then having him to get our board back is what he's going to be needed for. And now it's time to showcase the grade 1s. So, another tech choice of the deck is that I'm playing 1 copy of Lunar Crescent Knight Felax. When I was going through all of my cards, I had 1 space left, and honestly this grade 1 could be anything, but I'm choosing Felax because his ability to bounce back pieces that are on call help me manipulate my board and choose where I want pieces, or if I want to add pieces back to my hand, like I can reuse a Palamedes, I can arrange where I want to put my Barron at, and he just gives me that really good board control along with the power up that I will need throughout my games. He's also really important in my Chaos Breaker Dragon games, as if Chaos Breaker Dragon was a very big deal at my locals, which he's not, then I probably would bump this card up to 1 more, but I'm just playing him for certain matchups that I need to get my pieces off the board for. For my next grade 1, I play 4 copies of Little Sage Marron. I cannot tell you how happy I am to finally have a deck where I can play Marron and it be extremely helpful. So, as you've seen with our Jewel Knight strategy, we do a lot of superior calling and multiple attacks that involve us calling over units that we have. But in the situation where we don't want to call over units that we have to make a really strong column versus making a very strong row by calling another unit in the front, another unit in the front to get additional attacks, we have a card such as Marron who has the ability to give 3,000 power to itself and when a new unit is placed in the same column as it. Since we're doing this calling so often and we're not really using counterblast or anything, not only does this help us with our card draw, but it also helps us make all these new columns relevant so that this way we don't get shut down by defensives. And playing 4 of this is extremely helpful as it's one of your backup options in case you don't have any of your key pieces in the back row to help out with that, and getting the extra card draw as this deck does desperately need it. But that's why I'm so excited to have Marron in this deck, because he or she or whatever it may be fixes everything that we needed to do. For my next grade 1, I play 4 copies of Charging Jewel Knight Morvidius. Now, Charging Jewel Knight Morvidius is another one of the Jewel Knights that you need to have, which automatically makes her a 4 in the deck, but she's potentially the most important card to have in the deck, as her Vanguard ability that lets you draw whenever you get it whenever it's called over in the Vanguard or Rearguard circle helps us with our card draw. It gets us more pieces. And then her ability to give one of our units 5,000 power while recycling our unit and getting more soul means that we're able to keep our Ashlei strategy going, as because it is an active ability, we can control it in our main phase. We can manipulate our pieces and board since we're not forced to use it in the battle phase like we do with Laille. And this is how the board manipulation does matter in this deck, because depending on where you call things, it does affect how your attack patterns will go. And not all of your units obviously benefit from being called over, as you've seen with most of the other cards we play in the deck that are not Jewel Knight. So therefore, you really want to be paying attention to what cards you place in what column, as if you have the wrong columns, they're not in the right spot, it really does hurt your attack patterns. And that was just my thought process when making this deck, as calling over any of the Jewel Knights at certain times is good, but 9 times out of 10, if you call over anything else, you don't benefit as much and it becomes a negative. But that's why having them be able to recycle and get the additional card draw with a card like Morvidius is really helpful, so that we don't feel bad about losing out on those resources we didn't have to give up. And that's why she's a 4 for the deck. Finally, for my last grade 1, I play 4 copies of Laurel Knight's Sicilus. Laurel Knight Sicilus is just the Royal Paladin grade 3 searcher. You really need to see your Ashleys. Ashlei cannot call over herself, and you don't have any ways of calling grade 3s out. And you need to be able to ride Ashlei on your first turn, because if you want to rewrite again an additional marker, you're going to want to have that Ashlei in play. And you need to be able to make sure that you can search for it. So having 4 copies of this card is really important to have. The 5,000 power in this deck is a little bit harder to get, as we're not extremely counterblast heavy as we are with our soul. So you're not always going to get the 5,000 power from this, but you don't care about that. You just want the grade 3 search. I'm going to go ahead and move on to my triggers. I play 4 copies of... Future Knights. I play 4 copies of Future Knights Lu. 4 copies of Bringer of Good Luck Epona. 4 copies of Flashing Shield Iseult. 4 copies of the Yggdrasil Maiden Elaine. And then finally, I play 1 copy of Shining Knights Milius. My trigger lineup is perfect. I don't feel as though the 8 crit 4 draw 4 heal needs to be changed. You want to see the draw triggers simply because of defensive reasons against all the other decks, and drawing into some of your Jewel Knight pieces early if you want to go for a rush strategy depending on what you're playing against is important. The criticals are important to have as well, because you need to play 8 crit since your units don't get any critical effects unless you're on Ashlei or with Barron, and the additional power for that is helpful as well. Heal triggers are self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into why I play 4 heals. Alright, you guys, so now we are at the point in the video where I talk about what marker I think is best for the deck to play. Now, with my variation of this Jewel Knight deck, in most of my games, I always found myself going Forced 1. Now, I know it's been a very long time since I've said Force 1 for any deck that I've played against, and I was very surprised for this deck, but as I stated before with Barron, one of the main issues with this deck that I commonly notice that we have is just getting the power. I mean, yes, you have Laille and Morvidius that will give you a good column, but if you want to make sure that your attacks are extremely relevant and you combine them with the effects of the triggers that you're playing and just thinking about the battle at hand, Force 1 is the best route to go, as you need this extra power to make sure that all of your attacks count. Because if you're going to go for a multiple attacking strategy where you use your rows to get additional attacks versus making a very strong column, then having that Force 1 to turn that Morvidius from an potentially 18k to a 28k attacker or just an 18k attacker, and if you have anything behind it to give more power, is extremely important and helpful to have. But I'm not going to sit here and say I have not tried Force 2. Force 2 is important as well, as there are some games where if you do have the early game advantage and you have the push to do so, I am strongly supportive of Force 2. I just want to state that in most of my games, though, I did go Force 1. That's why I didn't mention Force 2. But if you have the resources, you have the push, and you're already in a good position with everything that you need, then I recommend you go Force 2 just to make sure that all of your attacks become a lot more lethal, even though they have the lack of power. And that is it for today's deck profile, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help the channel. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you guys get notified with all the latest deck profiles I'm going to be coming out with. And Overdress will be starting soon, so you definitely want to hit the notification bell. And if your friend's looking for a pure Jewel Knight deck profile to have, go ahead and share this video with them so that they have something to go off of. Again, all of my decks are templates for everybody else to just build. This is just what I've been able to build from my personal experience and my personal play testing. So the rest of my United Sanctuary deck profiles will be coming out soon, so just stay tuned for that. Peace.